This week on CrossFeed,
freedom of speech, if you agree with me.
A great excuse for forgetting Valentine's Day.
The ELCA suspends the Sixth Commandment, and a couple of others, too.
Move over, Beatles. Obama is more popular than Jesus.
And who do you say that I am?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to CrossFeed Religious News. I'm Pastor Dale Critchley, pastor of St. Paul Lutheran Church in Delaware, Iowa.
Hey, I'm Pastor Jim Butler out here in beautiful Massachusetts, and it's good to see everybody and be back on this, the second day of Lent.
Yep. Now, we're going to do something just a little bit different this week. I want to do feedback first because it directly applies to the rest of the show. As you'll notice, those of you who watch the video, we're doing the split screen again, and I think we're going to keep it this way for a while. And it's based on a comment that we got. We listened to our viewers, and we got a note from George, and he says, "Just finished listening to the latest podcast. I like the side-by-side video format. The sound and video were quite sharp and clear. You're doing a great job. Keep witnessing and proclaiming the good news about Jesus. I keep you both in my prayers." Thank you, George. Really appreciate that. Appreciate your prayers. Appreciate anybody else, your prayers and your listening and watching and all that kind of stuff. You know what? I think our video is a lot better when we use Skype and we use this format. You get to see me a little bit bigger. That may be good or bad. We can't do the backgrounds. I've been looking and I can't find a way to do backgrounds. There's a couple things out there for Skype, but they're Windows only, and I'm just not going down that road. And so for the time being, at least until we find a solution, we're not going to be able to use the backgrounds. So you get to see more of us. Also, I'd like some feedback. I'm going to put this one out, and you'll have noticed this already if you're watching this in the podcast feed, in the video. I'm going to put this one out as a larger file this time. We're going to do it 640 by 480 instead of the usual 320 by 240. Skype's a lot clearer, and I think it actually should look kind of nice, hopefully. And so here's the thing. This is going to be a much bigger file. I'm going to be watching the downloads, and if the downloads are significantly less on this one, I'm going to guess it's because people didn't bother because it was such a big file. But we'd like to hear from those of you who are watching the video. Is this too big of a file size? Would you prefer the smaller picture, which is going to be, because I have a hunch it's going to probably triple or quadruple the file size. They could be pretty big files. So we're going to try it. It's going to be an experiment. And we'll see what happens on it. So those of you who are watching this on YouTube or Rever or one of the other video sites, you're not going to notice any difference because they have file size limits, and that's in order to keep it under the 100 meg file size. We have to compress it down pretty bad already. The video tends to be not so good. So if we were to go higher res with an hour-long show, it would really look bad, and there'd just be no point in making it bigger but lower quality. So that one we're going to have to keep the same. So we'd love to hear back from people. What do you think of those of you who are watching the video? Obviously, the audio shouldn't change, but what do you think of the bigger files? Is it would you rather just have it smaller, make it easier to download, or is your speed fast enough? And especially if, I'm really going to take into account if there are people who it's just too big of a file size and they're just not going to watch it if it's that big. All right, they're going to take precedence because we want to make this available to as many people as possible. So definitely want to hear from people. So, and you can send us a note at podcast@crossfeednews.com.
Bob. Email.
So,
having said all that, where should we begin?
Let's just start with those crazy Lutherans.
Okay. And now, since I know George is an retired ELCA pastor, George, really, the shout out to you, buddy. I'd really be interested in your opinion of this, and you think and what you the decision by this task force, the recommendations by this task force. No decisions have been made yet. That's very important to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But a recommendation has come down. For the past several years, the ELCA has been really hung up on talking about sex. Actually, back in the 90s was their first paper on it, first task force study. And it was pretty clear there they were heading down a road on homosexuality, which is not a biblical one. And then a few years ago, they had another task force study this whole thing again. And that would happen to be chaired by the New England Synod Bishop, Margaret Payne. Now, if you know Maggie Payne, you know her views on homosexuality. She has no problem with it. So the fact that she was the chairperson already said something about who was going to be, the direction. Matter of fact, the very first study they had back in the 90s in, what's his name? Stephen, can't remember his last name now. He has a book called, he used to be at Yale University. Name of the book is The Culture of Disbelief. But in it, he said, they wanted a conservative on the committee, but it had to be a reasonable one.
It's a conservative that agrees with us.
That's right. So, and then a few years ago, the last piece of this, they were supposed to come out with a recommendation to the ELCA's Church World Assembly a couple of years ago. But they didn't. And a guy named Brad Schmeling, a pastor down in Atlanta, went to his bishop and said that he was in this monogamous relationship with this other man. Now, the vision and expectations of the ELCA state that if you happen to be gay or lesbian in your orientation, you're expected to be celibate. He wasn't. And so the bishop began a process then of removing him from the ELCA's roster. Well, they came out with a recommendation that basically, a resolution out of there that basically said, please don't remove them. Please refrain from this while we're, kind of hashing this through. At the same time, two or three of the ELCA churches have ordained openly gay or lesbian pastors, and nothing has been done by their bishops. Matter of fact, at their church-wide assembly, this whole group of people who were gay and lesbian in their orientation stood up in front of the assembly and refused to sit down. If you're going to vote against us, you're going to look us in the eye and vote against us. I mean, very, very in your face about the whole thing. And one of the, in fact, one of the lesbian pastors, I think it was at that convention, that assembly, even was walking around in her white robes with this rainbow stole. So that's a little bit about so the recommendations that they came forward with. Their task force came, to me, were no great surprise. And the first one, there's a set of 4 recommendations. And each one is based on the previous one. So if the first one fails, then 2, 3, and 4 would not be considered at all. If 1 passes but 2 fails, 3 and 4 would not pass, would not be considered. That's how it's developed. So step 1 is to ask. Now I'm reading directly from the report here. Step 1 asks the assembly whether, in principle, it is committed to finding ways to allow congregations and synods that choose to do so to recognize, support, and hold publicly accountable lifelong monogamous same-gender relationships. Notice then, part of the idea is then a congregation can do it, though the synod doesn't like it. A synod can do it, though another synod doesn't. And their synod is what we in the ELC, Missouri Synod would call a district. It's a local judicatory. But that's step 1.
There's a
Step
Missouri
2.
Synod of the ELCA.
No, there's not.
Oh. Just wondering.
Yeah. Step 2 asks whether in principle is committed to finding a way in such publicly accountable, lifelong, monogamous, same-gender relationships to serve as rostered leaders of the church. In other words, pastors, DCEs, things like that. So the first is, can we support these people? The second is, can these people serve as pastors? Step 3 says then, can we respect then the people who say, I don't agree with this, and not bind their consciences? Can it commit to doing so in such if in the future implementation of steps 1 and 2, it will commit to doing such a way that all this church bear the burdens of the other, love the neighbor, and respect the bound conscience of any with whom they disagree.
Find a happy place! Find a happy place! Find a happy place!
So, and then step 4 presents a proposal how the church could move forward towards change in a way that respects the bound conscience of all. So that's the 4-step procedure that they're looking for. I have some very strong thoughts about this. I will let you have the first word, though, since I've spoken up to this point.
The local ELCA pastor around here, he's from Madagascar, and he's a wonderful, wonderful man. I have tremendous amount of respect for him. And speaking on this subject, he's talking about the $5 million or something like that they're spending on this task force. And this was a few years ago. I was asking him about it, and he says, "I don't understand why they need $5 million to discuss this." He says, "What Bible are they using? All right, I'll give them mine. It didn't cost me $5 million. They can have it. I'll get another one." But the Bible's very clear on this, and so last time I saw him, I said, he was talking about something else, just absolutely frustrated with the stuff that was going on in the LCA, stuff like this, and I said, "Why do you stay in it?" And he said, "Because I have local control. None of that liberal garbage is going to happen in my church." And so, I have to commend him and the other biblical pastors within the LCA who decide to stay, because if they leave, there will be no one there to speak up and for the truth. So, which I think that pretty much gives my thoughts on it. Really this comes down to, and for those of you who are not Lutheran or Roman Catholic, we said in the opening that they suspended the 6th commandment. That's using the Lutheran Catholic numbering system. It's commandment to not commit adultery. All right. The Bible makes it very clear that there is only one model for marriage, and that is one man, one woman, married for life. All right, or maybe I should say for sexual intimacy. All right, and that's the only model. There is no other model, and there's a purpose to that model, and the purpose is to point us to Christ. When you talk about homosexuality, people look at Romans, people look at Leviticus and all kinds of stuff. That's not where to look. All right, look at Ephesians 5. All right, that answers your questions about homosexuality. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave up his life for her. And wives, submit to your husbands. And, all right, why did God set it up that way? Because it's a reflection of his relationship with us. All right, if you do not have a wife and a husband, you either have two Christs or two churches. All right, but you don't have the two together. And therefore, it's not a reflection of God's love. Right? I guess this is a big deal, and why did churches making such a big deal about this? And there was an article about who was it that was complaining about churches making a big deal out of homosexuality and gay marriage and stuff, and not about social injustice and things like that. All right. Here's why it's a big deal, right? Because all of a sudden you've gotten rid of Christ. altogether. You've eliminated God's purpose for marriage, and you're opening the doors to all kinds of things, and none of them have anything to do with what God wants for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because as the task force looked at this, it says, disagreement says, well, where do they disagree? One is what is sin and the nature of it. And another area of disagreement is how one interprets the Bible. I mean, they're very honest about, where the problems are and where the disagreements are. Two things. Number one, if they go down this road and they begin ordaining gay and lesbian people, that they accept steps number 1 and 2. Step number 3, how do we deal with people who look at this differently and bind their consciences like your guy in town? I'll tell you how they're going to deal with it. The same way they deal with those who, initially oppose the ordination of women. They'll throw them out. Give them time. They'll talk about being tolerant. They'll talk, but soon this non-biblical position will become the dominant force, and anyone who speaks against it will be considered intolerant and not open.
Yep. Well, that's what's going on. One of the local ELCA seminaries, just down the road from us, basically, they told their students, all right, when you refer to God, you cannot use masculine pronouns. All right. We had a guy who had been who was attending there, and he was from Ethiopia, and he had a gun held to his head telling him to renounce Christ. All right. And this guy said, I'm going to refer to God with masculine pronouns because the Bible refers to God with masculine pronouns. He's God the Father. They said, well, if you do that, your grade is going to suffer. This is a guy who would not renounce Christ when a gun was held to his head. Do you think this guy cared about his grades? He's now in the doctorate program at Fort Wayne Seminary, the LCMS.
Well, I mean, that's where you look at them and you go, no, wait a minute, where's tolerance? Where's openness? Where's understanding of a different culture that rejects this?
Mm-hmm.
But don't let that stand in your way, guys. Really, you're being tolerant by telling people what to believe. We appreciate that. Anyway, by telling others how intolerant they are. Really, you guys, you're doing great. No, seriously. The other thing, but that's one thing that will happen. It will go down that road. The second, and this really hurts.
There never was much hope. Just a fool's hope.
Our partnerships with the ELCA, I'm talking the partnerships the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod has, particularly in the area of social ministry, will be totally destroyed. And right now, Lutheran Services Association, Social Services Association of America, or Lutheran Services Association, can't remember exactly the name, it's LSA, is across the country the largest religious social services organization in the country. Bigger than the Catholic Charities, bigger than the Salvation Army. It is the largest. Here in New England, we are involved with the ELCA in all kinds of different areas. When Massachusetts passed the law in favor, when we found out that the Lutheran Social Services in New England was allowing for gay adoptions, our New England district voted to pull out of all adoption support. Believe me, if this goes through, I guarantee you right now there will be a resolution before the New England District Convention this summer that will say if this goes through that we pull out of LSS completely. Can't stop individual people, can't stop individual churches, but we will pull out of Lutheran Social Services of New England. And that's exactly, that's what's going to happen, and it's going to ruin a ton of cooperative ministry. And it's not only going to be felt with us in America, but it's also going to be felt within the Lutheran World Federation. Again, it's the same thing that's going on within the Anglican Communion with the Episcopal Church. and the conservative African and third world churches that already get upset, at having certain agendas forced down their throat by what they call the northern Lutheran churches. It's just going to cause a greater rift.
Well, you mentioned the Episcopal Church, all right? The ELCA is already in fellowship with the Episcopal Church, all right? So they can already, now correct me on this, okay? They can already say you've got like, what's his name, Eugene Robinson, all right? Openly practicing homosexual, all right? Because he's an Anglican pastor, bishop actually, he could go and serve in an ELCA church, right?
No. Because in order to do that, he's supposed to live within the visions, expectations that the ELCA currently has.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, even though they have full communion and stuff, and George, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's my understanding, in order to serve within an ELCA parish. Because, they're also in full fellowship with the United Church of Christ, which ordains open homosexuals, but you can't. If you're going to serve in an ELCA parish, you have to live within the correct thing.
Okay.
Now, as I've mentioned in the past, I hang out on the boards of the American Lutheran Publicity Bureau, which is a pretty conservative ELCA group overall. Definitely the evangelical Catholics in that group, they are all pretty upset about it. They just are all kind of shaking their heads, going, we knew this was coming, and we're really sorry to see it. And if it does go through, it's going to be interesting to see how many other churches wind up leaving the ELCA. I don't think a lot of them would come to Missouri. I think because we're more conservative than a lot of them are. A lot of them do believe women should be ordained. They have some other things, but they're going to, be forming little micro synods and things like that.
There's already some of them out there that they could join. So I can't remember what they're called, but there's a bunch of them out there already available. So
there's a couple of them, but the one or two of them that I know of speak against the ordination of women.
Okay.
But I'm really sure that the word alone people would begin forming their, which is currently just kind of a network within the ELCA, would probably form their own church body.
So one thing I did appreciate from this article, there's this line, and this is the article that we tagged was the Chicago Tribune, which, they're based, ELCA is based out of Chicago. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod are separate denominations that accept a literal interpretation of the Bible and do not ordain gays. I appreciated that, so that they don't think that it's us too, because a lot of people think that Lutheran's Lutheran. All right, so I appreciated that. It was like a plug, It's like saying, so, if you want to be Lutheran, there are these other options available. So now we don't have to pull out like a full page ad in the New York Times or USA Today or something like that saying we're not them, like they did back in, was it 98 with the joint declaration on doctrine of justification.
Yeah, did need to do that then, but that's another side. Well, along the dealing, I'm just really, seriously, I find this very upsetting, and because I've had great relationships with people within the ELCA, I've had great relationships through wonderful groups such as Lutheran Youth Encounter, through my children who were adopted through Lutheran Social Services of New England. I've had members of my churches who served on the board of directors of LSSNE. It just really, really upsets me to realize that those relationships are going to be are going to be destroyed. And there's a lot of people in the ELCA who've said the same thing. If this goes through, we know it's going to destroy relationships and working partnerships with the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
All right.
And
now you read this the whole document, which I did not. I just read the Chicago Tribune article. It also says they also recommended the church develop a rite of liturgy for families at the time of divorce.
When will this insanity end?
That's probably within the actual. There's actually two documents that were published. One is Human Sexuality: A Study, or something like that. And then the other one was proposed recommendations for ministry.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking that a right for divorce just doesn't. I mean, I know there's biblical, grounds for divorce and all, um, but most divorces in our country are not based on biblical grounds. Um, and I'm just thinking, but at the same time, I'm thinking if you're gonna say it's okay to not get married and act like you're married, then you can't really tell people that it's wrong to stop being married. I mean, you're sort of just like throwing marriage out the window and just making up rules as you go along. So if you want to say, well, divorce is necessary and okay and all that kind of stuff, let's have a right. I don't know, it just seems weird. I haven't read that part though, so maybe it. I don't know if somebody's read it. Please offer your thoughts. It also says that they encouraged availability and funding for sex ed programs in public and parochial schools. And I went, okay, I'm all in favor of sex ed in school and stuff, but what does this have to do with the church recommendation? I mean, what does this have to do with the Bible? Frankly, I think that parents should be the main people that are educating kids about sex, but I mean, the reality is that a lot of parents are just so nervous about it that they'd rather have the school do it. At which point, I'd like to see the parents get more involved in, being aware of what curricula the school's using and still talking to their kids about what they're learning in school about it. But I was just thinking, what does this have to do with the Bible saying, oh, schools should have this? It just seemed like, do you guys actually crack your Bibles open when you come up with these recommendations? So, I don't know. That's just me.
Okay. This is under actually the resolution. One of the resolves was to request the office of the presiding bishop to explore the feasibility of developing liturgical resources for use by rostered leaders, individuals, and families in time of divorce. Doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a rite. It could be a series of prayers. It could be, all kinds of things.
Okay.
To encourage Augsburg Fortress publishers to consider developing education curricula with particular attention to the needs of children, middle school, high school youth, and their parents for understanding Christian values and making responsible choices.
But, they're not really ones to... Can you imagine what their sex ed program would be based on these kind of recommendations?
How about this one? To call upon the ELCA to amend the eligibility provisions of the ELCA pension and other benefits programs to include individuals in same-gender marriages, civil unions, and domestic partnerships consistent with applicable state and federal laws.
See, yeah, there you go.
To call upon this church to encourage the availability and funding of comprehensive sex education in public schools as well as in Lutheran private schools.
I just think that there's more important things for churches to talk about. Yeah, especially when they're not making any biblical recommendations on what kind of programs should be supported. It's one thing to say they should have it. It's something else to say they should support sex ed programs that encourage a biblical model for marriage. Which they would definitely not do, at least based on these recommendations and based on past experience with the ELCA. I'll plug Concordia Publishing House has a series, a sex ed series that has different books for different age levels that for parents that just have a hard time discussing it with their kids, they can just hand them a book and have them read it, and it approaches it from a biblical model and splits it up by ages, so it's age appropriate information. First about learning about your bodies and why boys and girls are different and all that kind of stuff, and all the way through teens and glorifying God with my body and stuff like that. It's a very good series. It's something that we're using with our kids, but we talk to them too, and it's one that I highly recommend to parents.
Mm-hmm. But you will be glad to know that the report says this is why this church opposes non-monogamous, promiscuous, or casual sexual relationships of any kind.
This is madness.
Why?
I don't know. And it opposes cohabitation. But the name of the statement is, the proposed social statement is Human Sexuality, Gift, and Trust. That's the...
It opposes cohabitation if you're straight, but not if you're gay.
Well, because though if you're gay, you can't, a lot of states you can't legally marry or enter into a civil union. So it's a monogamous, but it's supposed to be a monogamous committed relationship.
Sin is sin.
Okay, so folks, maybe you have a different opinion. I'd really, if we do have ELCA pastors and other than George and lay people, I'd really encourage their comments. I really want to know what you guys think about this. Yeah. And you will, you can get the two documents from the ELCA's website, elca.org. And you can find it right there, and you can read them yourself. So read them yourselves and see what you think. What comments do you have, actually reading the documents?
Yeah, let us know. Now, please.
Now, what gets me, of course, is this is, this we're supposed to respect the consciences of those who disagree. Obviously, that doesn't work in college classrooms in California. Actually, not across the country. But there's this case out in Los Angeles. I think it's Los Angeles Community College. Los Angeles City College. Yep. And just a couple days after Proposition 8 was passed, a guy by the name of Jonathan Lopez had to give a speech in class. And he made a speech opposing same-sex marriage. The speech professor cut him off, called him a fascist, and, wouldn't let him finish the speech.
Is that like the ultimate irony or what? Calling him a fascist because he disagreed with the establishment? I just thought that was hilarious. Like, you're not allowed.
It is a wonderful irony, isn't it?
Because you don't agree.
Did the guy know what fascist means?
That's Professor Kettle.
Yeah, really. But now I'm going to tell you. So anyhow, he's suing the school with the help of the Lions Defense Fund, saying he derives his freedom of speech. He was punished. I mean, yeah, I would have done this and more. To her benefit, the dean of students says she considers the complaint very serious in nature and has begun a disciplinary investigation. Yeah.
But the dean also wrote that two students were deeply offended by the speech. She quoted one as saying the student should have to pay some price for preaching hate in the classroom. Yeah, because it's not hateful to tell people that they're not allowed to have particular views. All right. Speaking of hate, all right, I've got to tie in another story. All right, I think I mentioned last week Chuck Colson's Breakpoint podcast, and I'm going to mention it again and recommend it because he was talking about there's a website out there, and I don't have a link, and frankly, I don't want to link to it because I don't want to give them more traffic. But you can Google it and find it, I'm sure. It's a Google map where there's a little red teardrop over all these different houses, mostly in California. Okay? If you click on that teardrop, it brings up the name of the person that lives there, their address. I don't know if their phone number is there or not, but you can figure it out if you have their address, okay, and their name, and how much money they donated to Proposition 8. All right.
Yeah, to ban, Proposition. Yep.
Right. Okay. So, what is the purpose of a website that shows where all these people live? I mean, what could possibly be the purpose of such a site? Right? The only one I can think of is to harass these people, which is exactly what's happening. These people are getting phone calls, death threats, harassing phone calls, vandalism. Churches are being vandalized that donated to it. These people are being attacked. All right. Speaking of fascism, I mean, Coulson compares it to Hitler's brown shirts. They go around and anybody that disagrees with the establishment, and I know you're not supposed to compare anybody to Hitler, okay, because it invalidates your argument. But you know what? He's got a point.
Well, I think in this case he does, because some of these people donated as little as $100. And the problem is that, California has a law that says if you donate $100 or more to a political organization, this information is made public. And it was originally to keep, for watching these guys. At the time, $100 was a lot of money. Today, I spend that in a week at the grocery store. Mm-hmm. They actually, the people who donated had actually put forth a thing asking the court to strike that down, and they didn't. And the Boston Globe very piously said, these people don't want to have the courage of their convictions now. And I wanted to write to them and said, so you want me to come to your house and threaten to blow it up? Do you want me to be, vandalizing your home?
Yep.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. These people are being physically and emotionally harassed for their viewpoints.
I know that we talked about in a previous show that there was a group of people that on both sides of the issue that pulled out they paid for a full page ad in, what was it, USA Today, New York Times, something like that, basically condemning all of these violent actions and destructive actions against these people. Okay, all right, that was a handful of people. Okay, and I commend them for doing that. All right, but where's the rest of the outcry? Where are the rest of the people that are standing up and saying, look, whether we agree with them or not, attacking them, literally, assaulting them is just plain wrong, and this is not the way to handle it. All right, where's the outcry?
And putting up their information, which basically is there to encourage people to assault them.
Yeah.
Where's the outcry? And some of these people being, forced to quit work, some of them being harassed at work, some, places, where they work being, that their employers being harassed.
So
I mean, it's, but this is just another example of that here. I got news for you. One student here who was deeply offended. Under the First Amendment, he has the right to preach hate in a classroom. He's not the professor. He's a student.
Yep.
That's what he is. And there's hatred on the other side. I have someone I'm pretty good friends with who was going to the law school in San Francisco at the Hastings School of Law, and left and went to another state to go to finish law school. But I said, well, what happened? And she was telling me, she said, they would say the most narrow-minded, hateful, bigoted statements. And everybody would be sitting there nodding. And it was just like, if somebody said the opposite of that, you guys would be calling him hateful, narrow-minded, and bigoted. Don't you hear what you're saying? That you're being the same way? No, this is perfectly reasonable thought.
Yeah. You're open-minded if you agree with me. All right? That's fascism, people. All right? This country was built on the idea that everybody has the right to their opinion. All right? And everybody has the right to vote their opinion. And yes, we need to have, I heard one person recently say that no, not everybody has the right to an opinion. Everybody has the right to an informed opinion. All right, well, you know what? I've got an opinion on this, and it's an informed opinion. It's something I've spent a lot of time studying. It's something we've talked about extensively. It's something that I've talked to a lot of people on both sides of the issue on. All right? I've got an informed opinion. And you know what else? I don't hate anyone. I have a lot of friends who are homosexuals. All right, a surprising number, and I don't hate them. They know I don't hate them, and but I just disagree on this issue of homosexual marriage, and I don't believe that it's right. Okay, but I'm against it because I believe that it's harmful. I believe it's harmful to them. All right, and so I guess you can, I'd rather they didn't put. I mean, I didn't donate money to this thing because it's in California, but and I don't have money to donate. But they could practically.
But
I don't want my house on there because I don't want my family, harassed. But you know what? From the pulpit, I preach that homosexuality is sin, along with a whole bunch of other sins. So, what's next? Is our church going to get harassed and attacked? Yeah, I don't know.
So I don't know either. I don't know. Well, okay, as long as we're talking about ELCA and beliefs and what is Christian, what's not, there's a comment here, more of a comment thing here on than anything about, and we talked about this Pew Research study as to what Christians do and don't believe. But, what's interesting is, reading this guy's opinion that he wrote here on troubling statistics reveal the true state of Christianity in America. And some of this, I think, again, we've talked about this, because it's talked about different religions all going to heaven, and we talked about how, well, maybe, they understand that denominations, not necessarily religions. Or the other one, it was kind of interesting, said 70 to 80% of Christians indicated they were born again. And the guy said, this guy goes, how can you be Christian without being born again? Well, it's just, a lot of Christian people, Lutherans, Episcopalians, Roman Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, wouldn't talk that way. I mean, I used to love. I had a guy, and he was Baptist, and he'd go, "Yeah, I'm a born again Christian." But you mean there's another kind?
Yeah, exactly. It's just redundant to us.
Right? It's just well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it was Senator Paul Simon one time was asked if he was born again. He said, "Well, I'm Lutheran. We don't really use that terminology."
Yeah. Are you born again?
I'm...
Well, I was baptized, so yeah.
Right.
So, all right. I want to, because we kind of ran long on that ELCA story, I want to kind of cut to the chase. Basically, he says, look, if you, he starts looking at the percentages and says there's a whole lot of people in church that don't believe the basic teachings of the church. All right. And so he nails it down to a little quiz. And so I'll ask these questions. These are sort of yes or no questions. And so I want all of our listeners and viewers to listen to these questions and say, okay, how would you answer this question? All right. So the first one, can a person not believe Jesus Christ is the incarnation of the living God and still be Christian? All right. Well, first you got to know what that means, right? Okay. Do you believe that Jesus is God in the flesh, that he's both God and man? All right. And still be Christian? Or can they reject that and still be Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think I'd have to say no on that one.
All right, that one, that is Christianity.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So that is the heart of the creeds, right there.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Christianity is. Okay. Can someone not believe Jesus' death on the cross is their only hope and still be a Christian? All right. I'd have to say no on that one too. That's the core of Christianity. Jesus died for me.
Okay. For me, the issue there was their only hope. Because some people, might have a faith in Jesus, but then who knows? But, there's something else maybe that they look to Ouija boards or something, or whatever. I mean, even Philip Melanchthon was into astrology. So, depending, that that the word only, that's the word I was. He needs, he should be their only hope, but there might be something else there too.
Well,
But
okay, it depends
to
on what
confess
you mean
his
by
death and
hope.
resurrection, yeah.
Are you talking
But they must
their
confess
only hope for salvation?
right. But they need to confess his death and resurrection. I think that would be interesting enough. By the way, talk to his death on the cross. Didn't mention he rose from the dead. He's alive, buddy.
Yeah, that's also critical. You can't believe that Jesus, body was stolen or one of those other goofy theories about the resurrection. All right, he rose again. All right, if Christ is not raised, where's our hope? All right, St. Paul makes that very clear. Okay, can a person reject the idea that they need a spiritual rebirth and still be a Christian? Did that one I say yes because I don't think a lot of people understand what it means.
Right. There, I think, just like, for us, we would say that's baptism. For he, that would be a personal decision. I mean, but I think most people, again, they realize they need a spiritual rebirth. But, again, I don't know. I agree with you on that one. Last one. Go ahead.
All right. Can a person reject the Bible as the source of information for their spiritual life and still be a Christian? That one's kind of a vague one. Put it this way. I think that someone can believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that he died and rose again to save them from their sin, death, and the devil, and say that the Bible is not the Word of God, and still consider themselves a Christian. All right?
And God would still consider themselves a Christian, consider them a Christian.
Yeah, right. All right. I know, speaking of the ELCA, I know ELCA people who reject at least parts of the Bible, if not see it as a man-made document. But they believe in the historicity and the purpose of those events. They believe in the divinity of Christ. I think they're wrong. All right. And I do think this is a very important teaching because as soon as you start, snip with the Bible, then you end up like Thomas Jefferson, who I don't think was a Christian because he denied the divinity of Christ and denied the resurrection. And so, I mean, unless there was something going on in his heart different from his actions as they're recorded by history, but can a person be inconsistent that way? Yeah, I think it's a really dangerous road to go down, but I think you could still consider that person a Christian. I think that person really needs to spend some time in prayer and, frankly, in the Word, and really looking at it and reevaluating that decision. But I think that person would still be considered a Christian.
Yep. Speaking of Christian, let's, or maybe you aren't a Christian, maybe you're a follower of our new Messiah, the President Obama. The one. I still think that was John McCain's best commercial. I'll tell you, I just still get the biggest kick out of that commercial. But now
it's funny how prophetic that was.
Yeah, is now the new American hero. In a Harris poll, sample of 2,634 U.S. adults. I guess this is an annual thing now. The number one hero named by Americans was Barack Obama, followed by Jesus and Martin Luther King, Ronald Reagan, and interestingly enough, George W. Bush, this guy who had some of the lowest approval ratings of any president ever to leave office.
Five.
Number 5. Yeah. Above Abraham Lincoln.
And ironically, in July of 2001, the first time they did this poll, right after he was, not too long after he was in office, all right, he was 19th. Now, at the end of his presidency, when history, or at least recent history, or the pundits have declared him a failure, he's number 5.
Yep.
So I wonder how many people said that just to really spite the.
I don't know.
I like him, so there. So okay,
Then there's
anyway.
John McCain, John F. Kennedy, Chelsea Sullenberger, the guy,
Chesley.
the pilot who landed at the plane, and Chesley,
Yeah.
Chesley Sullenberger, the guy who landed the plane in the Hudson River, and Mother Teresa. It shows me that this is very media driven.
Yeah. Okay. And now, Jim, being about 10 years older than me, all right, explain to me why John F. Kennedy is so high on this list. All right, he's totally before my time. Okay. Why is
He died when I was 2, so he's kind of beyond my time too.
True, but I mean, you're a little closer to his time. Okay. So, do you know why?
I don't know, because
Right. Some of our
he's just
older listeners or viewers or someone with a better sense of history, could you please explain to us why John F. Kennedy? I mean, I'm sorry, but you know what I know? I know 2 things about him. Well, okay, 3. All right, the Bay of Pigs. All right, Marilyn Monroe, and the grassy knoll. All right, and I'm sure he did some great things. But those are the things that I know about.
and he got us involved in Vietnam.
Oh, yeah. All right. So why is he, he was an adulterer. So this guy's a hero?
Well, number one, not too many people knew that when he was in office. I mean, he's also a deceiver because they kept showing him being so healthy and running around, and actually he had, severe back problems. He could barely walk. But that's another story. Although, on the other hand, he did bring us through the Cuban Missile Crisis successfully. But I think, there was just always this Kennedy mystique about him, I think, and his too short a presidency. But I think there's just always this almost mystique about him. And what could have been. I mean, that was the great days of Camelot. I mean, he was, kind of King Arthur.
I guess. I don't know. It just seems odd that he's, on both of these, both in 01 and this year, he's higher than Mother Teresa, And
he just,
yeah,
he's just always been that idealistic. Or maybe they're just comparing him to Teddy. There's no Chappaquiddick in John's background.
I guess. So,
So.
There's a few other comparisons they have here. Colin Powell was number 3 back in 01. Now he's number 16. John Wayne was number 8. Now he's out of the top 20. Michael Jordan was number 9. He's out of the top 20. Mother Teresa was number 5. She's now number 10.
Like I said, this is very media driven, I think, in a lot of ways because, it's who people hear about. I mean, now you don't hear about Michael Jordan, John Wayne, or who was the third one you said dropped? Oh, or Colin Powell. Colin Powell's kind of dropped down. So, but I'm really trying to figure out how George Bush jumped up so high. That's what I thought that was kind of odd. But that they would pick President Obama as number 1. I completely understand. I mean, he's number 1. I mean, this is done in February, so people are still kind of the whole new president.
It was before the stimulus package.
It was before the $1.75 trillion deficit he's projecting, and yeah, we
and keep in mind, deficit and debt are 2 different things. Deficit is how much debt we're going to accrue in a year, how much we're going to add to the debt. So yeah,
it will be interesting to see how much well, let's not go down that road. Road. Let's quit here.
But this I look at this and I go, remember now, and I mentioned this. This is right in our opening. All right, when John Lennon said we're more popular than Jesus. All right, and people were all in an uproar and that's horrible and all this kind of stuff. All right, Obama is more popular than Jesus according to this poll. All right. What does that say about our nation? What does that say about, I kept saying at his inauguration, he should have walked across the pools in the Capitol Mall. I mean, it was cold. They were frozen. He could have done it, But I think that the whole walking on water thing would have just been perfect. I mean,
Number one,
just a
let
guy.
me say this. I don't think it says anything. Because if you'd ask me who my heroes are, okay, Jesus would not be among them. Because Jesus is my Lord. And I don't think of Jesus as a hero. But if you, who as a pastor, are my heroes, I think my dad, I think a couple pastors to me who have been, just a model of what it means to be a pastor. I don't think Jesus would be, the one who would that would necessarily come to my mind. I know my son Josh's MySpace page. It says, "Who are your heroes?" It says my dad and my grandfather.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
Cool.
So according to him, I'm more popular than Jesus. So
when my children's message on Sunday, I asked the kids, "Where is God?" One of the kids pointed at me. I went, no, it's not me. It's the whole King Herod thing. They worshipped him as God, and he was eaten by worms. So I'm always real quick. Anytime anybody makes that confusion, I'm quick to correct them.
I went to a house one time for a call and knocked on the door. A little kid opened the 3-year-old son opens the door and saw me and goes, "Mommy, Jesus is here." I said, "Well, thank you for the promotion, but really, no."
I just worked for him. All right, one more story. This is ending on kind of a fun note. All right, so here it is. It's Valentine's Day.
Roses are red, violets are blue. You celebrate Valentine's, and death to you.
Okay, all right. It's Valentine's Day. You forgot to get your wife or your girlfriend or whatever anything for Valentine's Day. Okay. All right. And
Good for you. Good for you.
She's all right. She's mad at you, and you say, "Honey, I didn't forget. All right. It would be illegal for me to get you anything. The religious police would put me in jail if I got you anything. This way, I can still spend it with you. Otherwise, we'd be having to kiss through bars. At best."
Not that we're going to kiss at all, because the religious police will be after us. So, anyhow, this is really weird. This is in Saudi Arabia, and celebrating Valentine's Day is
Illegal.
bad. Yeah, and you cannot buy anything red. No red hearts. No red teddy bears.
And no
nothing.
Heart festooned red plastic handcuffs inscribed "Take me, I'm yours."
Which you bought your wife, I'm sure. Anyway. But the interesting thing is, this is all perfectly legal at any other time of year in Saudi Arabia. It's just illegal at Valentine's Day.
Yep.
Because this is a Christian holiday. What do they call it? A Christian pagan day or something like that?
Yeah. Or a Christian pagan feast that Muslims should not celebrate. Teachers remind students they must not mark the festival. Girls are warned against wearing anything red. Valentine's Day prohibition is in line with the ascetic Wahhabi school of Islam that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia follows. Marking Christian holidays is banned in Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of Islam, and a country where non-Muslims are banned from openly practicing their religion. Celebrating any holidays but the two most important for Muslims, Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr, I'm sure I slaughtered those, is taboo because they're considered religious innovations that Islam does not sanction. Even birthdays and Mother's Day are frowned on by the religious establishment.
Right. Okay, here's the thing. All Saudi clerics, be happy. Valentine's Day is no longer a Christian holiday.
Nope.
It's a day of hearts and roses and the color red. If you went out and asked people, who is Valentine? They would look at you and say, somebody had that name?
Yeah, what do you mean, who? Yeah. If
A Valentine is a what? A Valentine is the picture. A Valentine is the, you know,
it's a
I had the neatest thing. Oh, Joshua, if you're listening to this, my son, I never told you. This is so cool. One of our preschoolers came up to my office and gave a Valentine to Mr. Moose, our puppet, who goes down to visit the kids. And it said, "I love you, Mr. Moose."
that's awesome.
Next podcast, I'll have to bring Mr. Moose in and have him help me do the podcast. He'll be a great guest.
That'd be awesome.
So, but I'm not much of a ventriloquist. I hate to tell you that, but
yeah, we learned that last summer. So when you had Mark on.
Oh, that's right. I had Mark on. I forgot about that. Yeah, I'll have to bring Mr. Moose on. But anyhow, at the same time, even though it's illegal, it creeps even into the Capitol, where plays some stores. The stores don't trumpet the fact they got Valentine stuff, but they do get this red hue, and there are artificial flowers, and there are heart-shaped frames, and there's red lacy underwear and short nighties, and all saying "I love you."
Yeah, they just don't say Happy Valentine's Day. They just say I love you.
That's right.
So what these guys are doing, they're actually pointing out to people that it is a Christian holiday, that it is Saint Valentine's Day. It's a bit of a Valentine, if you read his story, it's a great story. Great, not in a sense, because he was martyred, but he was martyred because he's a Christian, and he wrote from his cell to the church and signed it "Your Valentine," and that's where the whole thing comes from.
Which, by the way, is why red is the color for Valentine's Day, and everything is red is because of his blood. That's a reminder of the martyr's blood.
Yeah, not because the heart thing is something completely different. But hey, Valentine's Day. You don't skip it, I'm married. I've got a responsibility to my wife. She would not be happy if I went, well, this is a Christian holiday, not a holiday for couples. She'd be pretty annoyed by that. So
you got the short red nightie? Is that what I'm hearing, or what?
I'm not going down that road, but
I'll take that as a yes. You see, we could care less about it, my wife and I. We have never celebrated Valentine's Day in any way, shape, or form. This year, the week before, we went out to Smoky Bones Barbecue, and then we went to go see the movie Push. If that's not romantic, I don't know what is. Barbecue, so. But, we, in past years, probably the closest we ever got is standing in the store, each grabbing a card and saying, "Hey, I like this one. Here's your card," and then read it, and we put it back on the shelf. This is never been anything to us.
Well, we got a pizza from Papa Murphy's, and we watched Mamma Mia, which I personally don't recommend. The ladies probably like it. I didn't like it because it was just like a tribute to immorality, and I like ABBA music, but I couldn't get it out of my head for like 3 days afterward. I was like, I kept waking up in the middle of the night, and each time there was a different ABBA song going through my head.
My wife's definition of hell would be to wake up in the middle of the night with ABBA music going through her head. So. No, she does not. I almost. I'd like to see it on I'd like to see it live in the movie theater. I'm not sure I want to see. Not movie theater. I'd actually want to see it in the play. I'm not sure I'd want to have Pierce Brosnan and Meryl Streep singing "Dancing Queen." That just sounds like a scary thing there.
Pierce Brosnan can't sing his way out of a paper bag. But now back to Saudi Arabia. The shop owners tell people, look, if you want to get gifts, snap them up quick before the religious police come through and and shut us down and stuff like that. So they still put it out there, but they've just got to be careful, and they know that they can have the stuff confiscated. But see, they make enough money off of it beforehand because people stock up, that they still get away with it. Although once in a while somebody will get imprisoned for it or something like that too. So you're always
one guy was in prison just for having the color red in his store at that time of year. So they do some things in blue and white. Maybe they are secretly Jewish. It's Muslims, and it's really St. Hanukkah's Day or something, I don't know.
Well, no, in Saudi Arabia it says they have strict gender segregation. Unmarried men and women cannot take a drive together, have a meal, or even talk in the street unless they're close relatives. Dating consists of long phone conversations and a rare tryst. Infractions are punished by detention. So, so the other thing is they've got a quote here. I wish things were different, said Faisal, a 20-year-old student, who said she would like to be wined and dined by her boyfriend. She's arranged to have red roses, a red box containing perfume, chocolate, and a CD of love songs delivered to him. See, there you just stick it all in a box and have it delivered, and that way nobody sees what's in it. There's another guy, and it actually has his name, Abdul Aziz Al Shamari. Bought his girlfriend 10 red roses, one for each month he's known her, 5 days before Valentine's Day, and stored the bouquet in his refrigerator to keep it fresh. All right, but his name is there, dude. You're busted.
Yeah. Actually, I want to know why this woman is sending her boyfriend a bottle of perfume. That one would worry me.
I'm assuming that was lost in the translation. It's supposed to be cologne, or else she's sending him a bottle and saying, "I'm going to use this when we're together," or something like that, or like, "This is my perfume. Smell it and think of me," or I thought that was kind of odd too, but.
I hope so. Hey, I think we better end this thing tonight before we get even crazier here. Again, I would really, really love your comments, especially members of the ELCA, or anyone else for that matter, but on the ELCA's proposals. We ran long on that, but I think for us, because of being LCMS pastors, this is really going to have an effect on our relationship with our brothers and sisters in that denomination. So that story or any other stories we cover tonight, podcast at crossfeednews.com.
Yep, or drop me a note on Twitter. CrossFeed News is my Twitter name. I've had a lot of people just over the past week or so have started following me. If any of you are listening or watching the show and started following me because of that, or you started following me for other reasons and you started watching the show because you're following me and you caught this, drop me a note. I'd love to know. I don't follow everyone back because there's just too many people and I don't have time to read all those messages, and some of them are spammers and stuff too. So if you are a listener or viewer of the show, send me a note because I'd love to get to know some of our listeners better. So, and I'll follow you back.
Is this some kind of new form of cyber stalking or something?
In a sense, yeah, but it's putting yourself out there. It's more what do you call it? Cyber narcissism. Here's me. Everybody look. But it's fun, and it's a great way to get to know other people, and keep in touch with keep tabs on people that that meet people, and you can it's a great way to keep up with friends that don't live locally and stuff like that. So yeah, no, it's cool.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, that's it. Thanks, everybody. And also a reminder, what do you think of the file size, those who are watching the video? And we'd love more feedback on the new side-by-side format, too. So thanks, everybody. And good night, and God bless you.